left 10. Carr tips it in and it's whoa, he spins into the end zone for the touchdown. Watching greatness on one end in LeBron. There's a dude with 35 in white getting it done defensively and then offense taking over the fight. Mama, there goes that man.
They have shared a brilliant championship battle, but the championship can only be won by one, and it's going Dutch in 2021. Max Verstappen, for the first time ever, is champion of the world.
Hello everybody and welcome to this week's edition of the Waterboy Experience. I am of course your host, the Waterboy himself, Davis McLemore, and I'm coming at you with fresh hot sport news, NFL, European football, nondescript motorsports, and a review of the Formula One race in Monaco. But before we do any of that, it's time for me to introduce my co-host, the Red Bull chugging son of a gun, the CEO and CFO of Nye Productions, also my financial advisor, Mr. Jason Shaddix. Jason, how are you, bud?
I'm doing pretty good, and don't forget, a really great financial advisor. When I met you, you didn't have anything to your name. Now, you're a millionaire.
No, before you met me, I had $5 million. You've just taken all my money.
Well, maybe. That was a bad intro. Oh, well, whatever.
You've made me spend all my money on podcast things. Hey, Davis, buy this new mic. Hey, Davis, buy this new cord. Hey, buy this thing.
I didn't tell you to buy that mic.
No, that was my decision, but because I don't have my mic. But anyway.
Because he makes bad financial decisions.
Because I have a bad financial advisor.
No, because I beat you over the head every time you do a bad financial decision.
That's your job as a financial advisor. Beat me over the head every time I make a dumb financial decision.
Well, I'm beating you over the head all the time. That's the issue.
You're just constantly beating me over the head.
I love beating you off.
Anyway, let's get straight into all this. So,
well, before we start, we do want to apologize if the audio is not that great or if it's a little bit too loud or a little bit too low. Like Davis said in the intro, he did get a new microphone, so we're testing it out, and we don't really have enough time to test it out before we record. So you're listening to this while we're trying to figure this shit out. So enjoy the ride. It can't be worse than last week's episode.
No, it absolutely can. We're going to try to make this the best possible episode we can. Audio-wise, it might not be the best, but hopefully content-wise, it will be much better than last week. So, are you ready to get started?
I'm always ready, man. I'm ready. I'm pumped. You watched the Monaco Grand Prix, like the full race.
Yes, this was actually my first Formula One race that I watched all the way through, live, and in living color.
Did you enjoy it?
Oh, yeah. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it more than I've enjoyed any NASCAR race that I've ever watched.
I mean, come on, the bar is so low on that. I mean, you really can't say that's comparable.
Well, true. But the one thing that I really liked about that race, it was just like, it was so intense. There was like just so many mistakes, I guess. But like there was just so much that would like just change the race just like that. And it would just constantly, it was just like, oh, we got a new leader. Oh, we got to do this. Oh, we got to do that. What's going to happen here? What's going to happen there? And it was like, there was just a lot going on in 77 laps.
Well, it wasn't 77 laps. They tried to do 77 laps. But the thing is, I would say this is exactly like when I watched the first full-time NFL game for me, which was the Raiders versus the Chargers. And you told me that's not how a typical I was about to say Formula One, but a typical football game looks like. And to you, I say this is not how a typical Formula One race looks like, especially with, and we'll get into this, the bad race directors, like the whole... They were basically running around with like chickens with their heads cut off because they didn't know what the fuck they were doing.
Also, the weather played a factor into that.
No, that's what I mean. Formula One has raced in wet conditions, and they've never had issues like these.
Weird thing, like with that Raiders and Chargers game at the end of the season, it was actually the first full-length football game I could get my girlfriend to watch. And we were sitting there, and I'm just like freaking out. And she was just like, I need to watch football more often. This is cool. And I said, babe, this is not at all what it usually is. This is just weird.
Exactly. The same with this Formula One. It's not the weirdest, but it is very odd that, you know, well, we'll get into it when we start reviewing the race. I don't want to get into it because then we still got news to talk about, other news. So what do you have? Do you have any good news? Do you got any important news?
I have a little bit of good news. In my eyes, it is good news. I think I don't know how everyone else perceives it, but I'm going to start off with the NFL. So this was last Wednesday. A Nevada judge ruled in favor of John Gruden on 2 motions opening possibility of a jury trial on his tortious inference claim that the NFL and Roger Goodell selectively leaked Gruden's emails to force his removal as the Las Vegas Raiders head coach on October 11th of last year. What do you think?
I find it to be very interesting because that is the one thing we did say when the whole scandal came out is, okay, so out of all those emails, because they were going through thousands of emails, you found that specific one. And I told you, okay, so say Gruden did send those emails, which he didn't.
Right.
He didn't say, oh, I sent them. He just said, it sounds like something I would say. So to me, I'm always questioning, like, okay, is that a real email though? And then how did you find that email out of the emails he had or he sent? Because that was over 10 years ago, if I'm right?
Right about over 10 years, yeah.
Okay. Those NFL coaches must get like hundreds of emails every week. So that's what I'm thinking is, how did you find this email? Out of all of them, did you specifically find text and then you just search for that specific word or whatever?
Yeah, and I mean, they said that there's over like 600,000 emails that they have that would be incriminating. But for whatever reason, these are the only ones that they released, and they've told them. People have been telling them for the past year, release the rest of them. Where's the rest of them? And they're like, oh, well, we don't have a right to release the rest of them. And then they're like, well, why did you release these? But I'll get into this whole shebang in just a second here. It is good news because the suit is now going to go into trial unless a settlement is reached. Which, knowing John Gruden, there will be no settlement. He'll want to go down fighting, you know? So,
especially because he doesn't like Goodell.
Exactly.
It's not just now about the money. It's about, I'm going to get even with this guy because I really hate his guts.
And then NFL spokesman Brian McCarthy actually released a statement. He said, quote, "We believe Coach Gruden's claims shouldn't have been compelled to arbitration, and we will file an appeal of the court's determination. The court's denial of our motion to dismiss is not a determination on the merits of Coach Gruden's lawsuit, which, as we have said from the outset, lacks a basis in law and fact, and proceeds from a false premise. Neither the NFL nor the commissioner leaked Coach Gruden's offensive emails." So, the NFL's not going to go down. They don't want to settle. They're just like, nah, we're not playing with that. So,
Wait a minute. The NFL said that none of them leaked the emails, right?
reportedly, nobody in the NFL or the commissioner leaked the emails. It was the New York Times.
And who gave them to the New York Times? Because the New York
Exactly.
Times can't have access to all that stuff. Because in order to get access to emails and stuff like that, you need warrants or you need somebody who's got those emails and will send them to them.
Well, and also, this actually came out during the trial. Gruden's lawyer actually said this. He said, reportedly, Goodell held the emails, and he would call the Raiders facility and threaten to release the emails if they did not fire Gruden.
Do we have a response from Mark Davis or anybody in the Raiders office in regards to these allegations?
All that Mark Davis has said is, ask the NFL. They have the answers.
Oh, this is getting spicy.
It's also smart because I know Mark Davis does not want to get involved in this because he still has a team to run. He doesn't want that distraction, and he doesn't want Goodell to turn his head at the entire Raiders team as a whole. So I understand why Mark is hesitant to get involved in all this. But the judge was actually really concerned with Goodell having sole power over all this.
Yeah, because, like I said, the New York Times leaked it, but who gave it to the New York Times?
Exactly.
So that's why, like I'm saying, I honestly believe it was Goodell who leaked them himself. Because you've always told me Goodell does not like John Gruden.
No, Goodell does not like John Gruden, and John Gruden does not like Roger Goodell. And nobody likes Roger Goodell, but now nobody likes John Gruden, and that's okay. But, the things that Gruden did say, if they are really what he said, which I can believe, they are incriminating. They are something to be taken seriously, and he should not have said them. But if Goodell did not have a problem with Gruden being the head coach of the Raiders, would they have ever come out?
Probably not.
Probably not. So Gruden, they asked him, if he's excited to see if all the other emails will come out and all that stuff. And Gruden just said, I'm just going to let this process take care of itself. It's good to be back in Vegas, and I'm going to go spend the night with some old friends. Go Raiders. I hope this all works out really well for John Gruden, especially I am biased as a Raider fan, but, a lot of people are rooting for him because now they're seeing Roger Goodell for the pussy that he is.
Well, I'll see if we can keep that in.
We can keep that in, but, Gruden used another word before that, which I'm not going to use, but, anyway. So, staying in the NFL.
Well, hold on. So, let's say that John Gruden wins this. Okay, what is going to happen with Roger Goodell? Like, what is going to be the outcome to this? Because if it turns out, oh yeah, Roger Goodell did leak this, and the NFL was aware of this they always knew that he's the one that leaked them and all that, and he looked for those specific emails, or he made them up.
The owners of the NFL could all decide to vote Goodell out as the NFL commissioner if that happens. I mean, you'd probably have one owner that was like, no, keep him. It's probably Jerry Jones.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Jerry Jones is complicated about everything. You vote for everything, everybody will go for it except for Jerry Jones. But he's just like that.
He's just stuck in his old
ways.
But
yeah, I could see a situation like that happening where Goodell is actually outed as the NFL commissioner. So.
And then if more stuff comes out about Goodell and like exactly what he did, I'm pretty sure a rat like him would try to rat out the NFL.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just wondering what the NFL is hiding.
Only time will tell.
Exactly.
But let's stay in Vegas for a second. This is kind of getting old news, and it's kind of being replayed over and over again. But Colin Kaepernick did work out with the Las Vegas Raiders. I don't have much to say on this because, yes, he's a good player. He's good enough. But those last 2 years with the 49ers, he just struggled. And since he hasn't played since 2016, how good can he really be now? And I'm setting aside everything, all of the politics around him and everything because, he took things too far much later.
Obviously, you're not referring to taking a knee. That's not...
No. I'm leaving the taking the knee thing aside. I can understand that. But we're talking about a man who compared playing in the NFL to slavery. That's what I'm talking about.
Yes, so if you haven't heard...
Now he wants to come back. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, so if you haven't heard it, I'll say because Davis is a lighter skin tone and I'm not, so...
Take the heat for me.
I'll take the heat for him. So essentially what Kaepernick did was he said that the training compounds where, NFL prospects go there to, test out and you see if they can earn hundreds of millions of dollars in a career, do what they love, live the lifestyle that very few people can. He compared it to slavery and that they're all, slaves being measured to see their worth and stuff like that. And everybody at the time called him a fucking dumbass. And I kind of believe it because, if you're...
Everybody turned on him.
Yeah, because that is just a stupid comment and in no way is that comparable.
I just I tried to leave all that politics out and I tried to look at him as a player and I don't see it. But Josh McDaniels did not tell Derek Carr about Kaepernick working out, which he felt like he didn't have to because at the end of the day, Las Vegas Raiders is Derek Carr's team. Josh McDaniels' quarterback is Derek Carr. Ultimately, working out a player does not directly translate to signing him. If they did, he would be a solid backup, but he's been out for so long and he's older than Carr at this point. And even when he was in his prime, he was not as good as Derek Carr. So to say that he'll be Derek Carr's replacement, and there's a lot of Raiders fans that are saying that, oh, finally we get Colin Kaepernick and all that stuff. To say that he's going to be Derek Carr's replacement is ridiculous. At this point, it's been several days, and I don't see them signing him because they haven't offered him a contract yet. And I think if they were going to.
Not to mention that Carr just got an extension on his deal.
Oh, yeah, big time. Anyway, moving on to the Chiefs' offensive tackle Orlando Brown reportedly wants to be the highest paid tackle in the league. What has he done to deserve that? Nothing. Moving on.
Hold on. Who's the highest paid tackle right now?
That's an excellent question. Give me just 1 second. I can look it up for you. The highest paid offensive tackle in the NFL right now is Trent Williams. His name is not Trent Williams. They just said the last name first for whatever reason and then repeated the name. But it's Trent Williams from San Francisco. So,
how much is he getting paid for?
$23 million.
Huh. And he wants to get paid, I'm guessing $25 million, maybe closer to
Yeah,
30.
Orlando Brown wants more than that. Orlando Brown's not even on this list.
Good luck with that, buddy.
Good luck with that. Also, interesting fact, as we're recording, this actually marks 100 days until the NFL season officially starts. But we also, really quick, we want to make this announcement because it came in yesterday. Former Vikings and Cardinals defensive back Jeff Gladney passed away at 25 in a car wreck, it's tragic because this guy was a first-round pick. He was just getting his stride. I hadn't seen much of him play, but I remember when he was drafted, and I'd seen the highlights. He looked great. So it's a shame that a career that young had to end that soon. So thoughts and prayers out to his family and to the NFL and the Cardinals. Anyway, but I'm actually going to hand the ball to you right now. I'm going to let you handle the Real Madrid and Liverpool game.
But first, we have some news that came out last week.
What? More news.
More news, yeah. So one of the news is, and I'm very excited for this because he's my favorite driver. He retired at the end of last year's season in Formula One, and it is Kimi Räikkönen, who will be returning to racing this August at Watkins Glen for the NASCAR Cup Series with Trackhouse Racing in what appears to be a one-off appearance. But still, I'm very excited, and I am...
Iceman.
Yeah, the Iceman. Gimme. And I'm actually going to watch this race. I don't like NASCAR. I'll be honest. I really don't find it anything worth watching for me.
But you'll watch it for Kimi.
I'll watch it for Kimi. Anyway.
It'll be fun.
It'll be fun. But staying in motor racing, this past Sunday was the Indy 500. And as we said last week, Scott Dixon got pole position. And he actually led half the race. But his hopes of turning it into a race win were dashed when he sped in the pit lane and was given a drive-through penalty. From there, the race was kind of open to whoever, but it was mostly for Pato O'Ward, who was racing for McLaren. And if I'm right, he got an extension on his deal with McLaren, so he'll be staying until 2024, 2025, I believe. But you know who won the Indy 500, Davis?
Who? Should I give you a drum roll?
Give me a drum roll. The Indy 500 was won by former Formula One driver Marcus Ericsson, who defended brilliantly against Pato O'Ward. If you saw the race, it was great because towards you think going into the last corner, Pato was about past Ericsson, but then Ericsson just went ahead, and then it was a yellow flag, so couldn't overtake, and then he took the win.
Hey, there we go. A former Formula One guy.
Yeah.
We love to hear that.
We always love to hear that. And also, there were over 325,000 people at hand for the Indy 500, the second largest in its history. And also, Ericsson took the biggest purse, which was...
He took a woman's purse?
He took a woman's purse that had $3.1 million, the biggest any Indy 500 race winner has ever won.
Jeez.
Yeah, well... In other news, NASCAR news to be specific, Denny Hamlin won the Coca-Cola 600 at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. So, yeah. Also,
good for Denny Hamlin.
Yeah, good for him. Also, last week, we forgot to say this, and I cannot believe we forgot to say this, but Manchester City won the Premier League Championship.
Hey, there we go.
Except for our friend Kyle, who's a big Manchester United fan.
Yeah. Manchester City and Manchester United. I always get them confused.
Just think of it like this. Manchester City are the ones that are rocking, are winning. Manchester United are the ones that suck.
Ones that will never win another game.
No, probably. But anyway, we also have another championship game, which was the Championship League that this past Sunday they played in France. It was Real Madrid versus Liverpool, with Real Madrid winning 1-0 to clinch their 14th Champions League win.
Which is a record, by the way.
It's a record?
Mm-hmm.
Good for them. But, unfortunately, it wasn't such a great game in every aspect. So if you've seen the news, you'll see that there was a lot of controversy. So before the game, a lot of people were still trying to get into the arena, and there was around 30 to 40,000 people who were trying to get in. And a lot of these people had real tickets, because the thing is, the French government is saying that all these people had false tickets, and essentially they said that, quote, the root of the problem was the massive industrial and organized fraud of fake tickets, which, like I said, they accounted to be 30 to 40,000 fake tickets, which is a figure supported by the UEFA.
Can there really be that many fake tickets to the sporting event?
No, I don't think there was that many fake tickets, but what I did hear was that one of the gates was down, one of the machines that checks the tickets, and essentially people were having to, we're going to have to take tickets, and then we're going to have to put those people in by hand, and apparently a few people, a few thousand people got in who did have fake tickets. Some of them had fake tickets, or what happened was, people made fake tickets, and they were already in the arena with the fake tickets. Well, the people with the real tickets were outside, and they were like, what's going on? This is not fair. And essentially it just became a problem, and then the French police began throwing tear gas, pepper spray, and it was just beating up the crowd. And from what I can understand, the crowd was a little bit rowdy, but they became rowdy when they were denied access, and a lot of them said, we did have tickets, we did buy them. And so now I'm wondering, what's going on with this? The French government, whoever's in charge of organizing this, I don't know how tickets work over there, but you got Ticketmaster and all that. So I'm pretty sure they have something similar to that, and they must get their tickets from an official place. So there shouldn't be this issue.
No, I mean...
But yeah, it became that issue, so they delayed...
If 40,000 people can get fake tickets, you've got a bigger problem.
Yeah, and another thing was, like I said, they were beating and all that, and Liverpool, the Liverpool club, actually put in, they're asking their fans, if you went to this game and you were denied getting into this, tell us exactly what happened, because we want to know exactly what went on with this, because we do not understand why 30 to 40,000 fake tickets, like, that doesn't make any sense.
Imagine you travel all the way from Liverpool, England,
or other parts of Europe.
To Paris, France, and you want so bad to watch your team play in the Championships League final. And you get there, they don't let you in, they pepper spray you, they beat you with batons, and they tear gas you. And then you finally manage to get in after the game was actually delayed for 30 minutes. And then your team loses by 1 point.
It is heartbreaking.
Which was scored by and excuse me if I pronounced his name wrong, Vinicius Jr. He scored the only and deciding goal that clinched the historic win for Madrid. But still, I mean, sucks to be a Liverpool fan.
It does, and I mean, we can't really speak about how great the game was because we didn't watch the game. We're not real big football fans.
Yeah.
We're American football fans. We're not just really big football fans from across the pond. For the rest of the world, that is football. For us, that's soccer, but... we don't want to.
Well, and they're just as passionate, if not more so, over there as European football as we are over here with them.
Oh, I think they're more passionate.
Probably more.
So after essentially what was a riot, because people...
essentially, yeah.
Yeah, because people were jumping...
You don't see stuff like that happen over here with American football.
There were riots going on. It essentially became a riot, and there were people who were jumping the fence who didn't have tickets. So, I understand why they started going, okay, we got to calm the crowd down, but what they did was wrong. Now, another thing is, after the game was delayed for 36 minutes, the organizers wanted to have a Super Bowl-style pre-game show, which was the singer Camila Cabello, who was doing her whole presentation and all that, and people didn't want to hear that. People wanted to watch the game. It's a final. Yeah. Like you said, football fans in Europe, they're very passionate. They want to watch the game. It's not like American fans who, they love the...
They don't care whether they watch the game or not. They're there to be there.
Yeah, that's the case. But over there, they're very passionate. They want to see the game. They're tired of it being delayed. They understand what's going on. But at the same time, we just want to watch the game. We want to know who's going to win. And she came out and she did her dance, and the crowd was booing her.
Rightfully so.
Rightfully so. The crowd was booing her, and they were singing their team's anthem and all that. And actually, she went on to vent on Twitter, and she said in a now deleted tweet, quote, "Playing back our performance, and I can't believe people were singing their team's anthem so loud during our performance. Like, my team and I worked tirelessly for so long to bring right vibes and a very good show. Very rude, but whatever. I'm glad you guys love it," end quote. Many people then went on to point out that her Super Bowl-style performance isn't something that football fans are used to or will want to see, especially, like I said, after the game was delayed for 36 minutes.
It's not. I mean, and for us, we have the Pepsi halftime show, and some people look forward to that. Some people, that's the only reason they watch the Super Bowls, for the commercials and then the Pepsi Super Bowl halftime show.
Or go to the Super Bowl, period.
Right. Yeah, because, it's a big concert. But over there, they don't have that. They just want to get in, watch their soccer game. They want to see the ending, and then they want to get out.
Exactly. And I did see a lot of people on social media saying, attacking her. Well, not attacking her, but pointing out the fact that, you have to understand, if you're going to perform here, you have to understand that people don't want that. This isn't America. You can't think people are going to love this. And she did put on what I thought was, I didn't really think it was that great of a performance. I thought it was okay, and it was very much...
it's Camila Cabello. How good can it
be? She was singing love songs during a football game. If you wanted to sing...
We can't do that.
Yeah, you can't really do that. No, if you really want to hype up football fans, just get Samoans out there and do their traditional songs. Trust me, you'll hype everybody up.
Get Metallica. Where are they at?
Yeah, but anyway, so... that doesn't stop there for France being criticized, because the next day there was a football match in France for their league. Now, I can't pronounce their names because they're in French, and I spectacularly failed French class.
Do you mind if I try?
Oh, be my guest, brother.
This is words. Saint Etienne versus Auxerre. Butchered that, I'm sure.
We just lost any French friends we could possibly have.
Yeah, immediately all of our French viewers just turned out.
Yeah, but it was Saint
Etienne.
We'll go with that. Saint Etienne versus Auxerre. Or I'm sorry.
Sir.
Oh,
sir.
They're French. They don't pronounce words. It's weird. But anyway, so essentially, the Saints team, we're going to call them that, they were playing a game that was very important because if they lost that game, they would be taken out of League One and would be put into League Two. So they would just go down a peg, kind of like you go from being an NFL team to an XFL team.
That's a downgrade.
Well, yeah, but it's not the same thing because they have multiple leagues, but it's more like this team is over 100 years old, and they've usually been in League One, so it's more like an insult to your pride, but they lost the game. It was, I believe, tied 2-2, and then it went into overtime, and then the other team scored and won, and the fans started storming the field. They actually started throwing flares at the players, and they got injured. I mean, the players were celebrating for a little bit, and then they had to go inside, but yeah, that's what happened with them, and it's not the first time. In November, the Saints team had to play a game with no fans in the arena simply because they were getting too violent. So with this going on, with what happened on Saturday, a lot of people are questioning whether France can host something big like another championship league game or the Olympics or something like that, because they're saying if you can't even put a handle on something like this, how can we trust you with something even bigger?
See, over in America, one little fight happens in Las Vegas, and people go, well, we can't have a football team in Las Vegas. This should never happen. But a literal riot happens in France, and you know this isn't going to change anything.
Yeah.
We're still going to have sporting events in Paris because it's one of the bigger cities in the world. So
yeah, but it's still, like I said, it just puts into question whether they can handle that.
Now, let me ask you this, because we look at this, look at every sport that we have in America. And think about how Americans react to them. I'm talking about professional wrestling. I'm talking about the NFL, even the NBA. Less and less people care about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially with the NBA. I mean, the NFL's least watched game last year was more than the NBA's most watched game. And I mean, professional wrestling is not even up there in the millions, hardly. But look over there, look at how passionately and how seriously they take their sports. Look at how they react to it, and look how many millions of fans you can get in Formula One and soccer and all that stuff. Or football, my bad. What do you think the biggest difference between American sports fans and European sports fans are, and why is one kind of not interested or not as interested as Europeans are?
See, that's an interesting question, and I don't really have the right answer. I don't even know what it could be, but my guess.
You're the professional here. You should have all the answers.
Well, my guess, I can tell you why, Formula One isn't big in America, and it has to do with, Formula One is very much in Europe. It's a European sport. The races come on very early, too early for most people. Like, for next race, it's going to be in Azerbaijan, and it's going to be a 6 a.m. race for me.
Yeah.
So that's one thing.
I'm probably not going to watch that, honestly.
If you end up watching the race, you're going to end up watching the last 10 minutes of the race if you get to the gym.
I'm not going to make it to work.
Oh, that's true. But that's one thing for Formula One. Another thing is that Americans are very much patriots and like to prefer their own sports. That's why baseball, basketball, and American football are the big thing over here, but not all in the rest of the world. And soccer isn't a big thing here. It's trying to be, but it can never be because it's not an American sport. And like I said, it's about the patriotism. But
when was the last time you heard something about the Major League Soccer, the MLS?
Never heard anything.
Or I'll even go as far when was the last time you heard something about Team USA, the men's soccer league? Women's soccer team is a lot better than the men's soccer team is.
The women's soccer team is great, but you really don't hear about them. Honestly, you really don't.
Yeah.
The men's soccer team, people say, the U.S. team is doing great right now. It's doing great.
And they lose in the first round of the FIFA Cup.
Yeah. So everybody, I know, everybody really knows that American isn't that great, and they're never going to win a world championship.
Put a bunch of Mexicans on the team, and then we can win.
No. No. Put a bunch of Argentinians on the team, and then you win.
Oh, there you go.
Brazil.
There you go.
But yeah, so I don't really have an answer for that. It's just weird. But one thing that is hurting sports in America, and it is something that happens everywhere, is how sports are becoming too protected. You see, remember when I sent you that video the other day? It was an intro for the NFL, and it was all these things, and the caption was...
And literally every single clip would have been a penalty now.
Exactly, so that's the thing. The NFL is becoming too, for lack of a better word, too WWE. It's becoming too overproduced.
I mean, that's because, the concussion stuff, they got in trouble with that, and now they're doing everything they can to try to get heat off of them. Even the NBA, I mean, you go watch, like, early 90s Detroit Pistons were just a rough, tough team that would just beat you up. And that was fun to watch. But now you look at it now, you got guys flying all over the place trying to draw penalties just because he touched me or something like that. It's not nearly as entertaining to watch nowadays as it was back then, because back then you could throw elbows, you can get a little bit of contact, but now they consider it's a non-contact sport.
And hockey has been tamed if you think about it.
Oh, it has. And that's still saying something because
they still get into fights, but the thing is, it used to be more exciting if you see old games. But yeah, I think that's a big problem in America, is that it's changing too much and it's becoming overproduced over this and all that. It's not like, one thing I've told you about is older games look more exciting because you had, it could rain, it could snow, you could get mud balls and all that. Nowadays, every stadium is just closed in and you can't have that excitement that you used to have in the old games, except if you go to Green Bay.
I love those snow games for whatever reason. I'd hate to play in them, but those snow games are just really fun because it's just a low scoring. You have to run the ball. You have no other choice, and you have to just, it's just that ground and pound style of football. And I love that. And I think that's one thing that's kind of been taken away from the NFL, was everybody tries to play in the same style nowadays because, weather's not a factor, because we can all play in these domes.
Yeah, and, weather is not a factor. And like you said, teams from the West Coast, when they would play games that were more north, they wouldn't play as efficient because they're not used to the cold, and vice versa. Yeah. And that's something that, used to be a factor in it, but nowadays it's not. And like I said, it just takes away the charm of it. It's like NASCAR. NASCAR became too overproduced, too this and too much that it's losing viewers. Pretty much most sports in America are losing viewers every single year. The NFL, I think they saw a 3 to 12% drop in ratings.
Yeah. No, and you haven't even heard about the Pro Bowl. There's a lot less interest in the Pro Bowl. Every year for the past several years, the Pro Bowl has just been tanking in ratings. So that's why they're talking about getting rid of it. So, because there's no point. But,
Well, if they want to keep overproducing this stuff, going to eventually not have the fan base that it had before. It's going to be like wrestling is. Like in 1999, there was 10 million people watching professional wrestling. Nowadays, they're happy if they crack 2 million.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's like a success for a wrestling show to crack 3. If AEW cracked 3, we'd never hear the end of it. We'd be hearing about it for years. But WWE, even if they cracked 3, that would be impressive, because SmackDown right now is their most watched show, and it's doing 2.1, 2.2, right around there.
Yeah, and people say that it's mostly because, people don't watch TV anymore. People have Netflix, have Hulu, have this. No, people still watch sports. People, will watch TV. Because think about it. The Walking Dead during its height was getting 20 million views per episode. And I'm like, trust me, if people wanted to watch those games, they'd be able to watch them. How many views does the Super Bowl get? 100 million?
Yeah, right about.
Yeah,
maybe.
So there's 100 million people that will...
And that number's going down.
Yeah, and that number is going down. So what does that say? No, people are there to watch games. You're not going to get 50 million views for every NFL game. Obviously not, because everybody has their teams. But at the same time, you're seeing a steady drop every time you change something, supposedly to make it safer. Look, I understand safety is something that we want, but at the same time, you're playing American football. It's like saying in MMA, we have to do these things so you don't get hurt, and it's like taking away the spirit of it. You go into MMA, you go into football knowing that, I can get hurt. If you're playing hockey, I can get hurt. I can get my throat slit by the skate.
You're sacrificing entertainment for safety. That's what it's always been about.
You're bringing in this entertainment that not really a lot of people are liking.
That's why you try to make up for taking away the entertainment part. You try to put more different kinds of entertainment on it that football fans don't want to see, soccer fans don't want to see, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it just becomes overproduced, and it becomes more like it's a performance, not a race, a game, all that stuff.
Yeah, and you see this in a lot of places. Formula One with the Miami Grand Prix.
Yeah.
A lot of people didn't like that race. It wasn't the track itself. The track was an issue, but it was mostly like they try to overhype it. They try to make it more about the glitz and the glamour than it is about the actual
It was more
race.
sizzle and less steak.
Exactly, and that's
Because the race itself, if you stripped everything away from it and you just looked at the race, it was not that impressive, not that great.
I thought it was okay. It wasn't anything special. There's better races, but yeah, it was more sizzle and no steak.
Well, I'll tell you what race was better. Formula One race this weekend in Monaco.
Well, that's up for debate, but let's talk about that. Speaking
You don't think it was better than Miami?
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit?
Just a little bit. But let's go into the Formula One race because we are running long on this one. But like we said earlier, you watched your first full race.
Yes, this is the first time I've watched a full live Formula One race, and I don't think I would have watched it live if the rain delay hadn't happened. How long was the delay?
So let's start with that. Okay, so when I started watching the race, they did the intro, Crofty, who is the lead commentator for Sky Sports, giving the grid, and then it panned to the grid where all the teams' mechanics were running like chickens with their heads cut off, and they were changing the tires. Should we go with the softs? Should we go with the intermediates? Let's go full wet. So it just went like that. The other announcer, Martin Brundle, was like, why haven't you gotten this race started? He actually said, and I love this quote, he said, "Oh, we might as well start this race tomorrow."
Exactly. I mean, you should have.
Monaco, this is not the first time they raced in the wets in Monaco. This is not the first wet race. And usually what happens is the race starts and boom, boom, boom. And if it's too much water, you switch on to the intermediates or the wets. And then, strategy comes into play and it throws chaos into everything. But that's not the case with this one. And here's the thing. It was barely starting to rain, and it wasn't even heavy rain. It was a light drizzle. That's the thing. It was a light drizzle.
Oh, yeah.
15 minutes later, there's like, okay, let's start the race. At this point, it was more wet, and they started going around the track for the formation lap. They did the formation lap. They would go into the first lap behind the safety car, and what happens is it starts raining like hell, and they're like, okay, we got to red flag this. And the announcer said, well, look at that. If they would have started the race like they should have, we would have gotten 15 minutes of racing, and then we would have gotten this rain, but we would have still gotten 15 minutes of racing. Now we don't have anything. And what was the point of starting the race literally a few minutes before it started downpouring?
What is that? Race directors?
Yeah, it's the new race director who did that. And they said it was for safety reasons. And I get that. I really do. But at the same time, this is not the first time Formula One has raced in the wets. And they said it's because we didn't do any practice runs in the rain. No, that's what makes the Formula One race better, because teams adapt. This is not the first race where it rained and they never practiced in the rain because it didn't rain throughout free practice Friday or Saturday, and this is the first time they're getting the rain. No, that's not the first time this has happened.
It shows really in the race who could drive in the rain. You really saw who could and who was used to it, and then you saw the people who weren't experienced enough, like poor Mick Schumacher.
Yes, and we'll get to Mick, but eventually the race did start, and it was actually an hour and 10 minutes after it was originally supposed to start. Yeah.
Jeez.
And there was times where the announcer were going, so, the safety car drivers should by now be going around the track and testing it out to see if it's too wet or not.
See, and I turned it on right as the delay was kind of going. I guess I got 30 minutes of rain delay, because I was sitting there and I was like, does this usually happen? What's this? What's going on? I thought a crash had happened or something. So
once they finally started, and this is funny, and you pointed this out to me because I didn't watch the race live because I was at work. The race starts, and they're barely going into the first lap. They just got out of the pits, and they're behind the safety car. And Nicholas Latifi for Williams slowly hits the barrier on the hairpin.
He just kind of goes, boom. And then he's like, fuck.
Yeah, essentially, he went on to say that the car wouldn't steer. He was turning the wheel, but the car wouldn't turn. And then later on, after the race, during the reactions they do on YouTube, he said, well, I felt like let go of the accelerator, hit the brakes, and I was turning. It wouldn't turn. And then for some reason, the car started accelerating again, as if the pedal was stuck. And he hit the barricade and just damaged his nose. He had to go into the pits. At the same time, Lance Stroll for Aston Martin ended up hitting the barricade. And it was a light tap, but it was hard enough to get a puncture, so his right rear was punctured, and he had to go into the pits to get that tire changed. And then when they released Lance Stroll from the pit box, he nearly hit Nicholas Latifi, who was going into his pit box. And it was like, what the fuck? These two can't get away from each other.
Does this have anything to do with the rain, or was that just the car?
Well, if it's a steering issue, it's more than likely something with the Williams. But then he said it was the pedal. That Williams. For Lance Stroll, it was him. He did hit a wet patch and he did slid a little bit. Or he misjudged the braking point, because when you brake in the rain, you can't brake late. You're not grabbing the tarmac enough to stop. And then the race starts. So once they go into the pits and all that, they start the race on lap 2, and it's a rolling start. Essentially, they're not on the grid. Instead, they're going around the track. And then as soon as the first person crosses the track, they accelerate and the race begins. And that person was Charles Leclerc, who was leading the race, who got pole position.
At one point, he was really leading by like a big margin.
One thing is that they weren't driving as fast as they could at the beginning because of how much rain there was.
Oh, yeah.
Charles Leclerc, when he went through the racing start line, he actually almost lost the rear of the car. If you've seen the replay, he almost lost it because there's just too much water and he put too much power on the throttle. So that's something that they have to take into consideration. And
because he was moving a lot faster than everybody else, and I was a little bit nervous. I was like, you might not need to be moving that fast. Slow down just a little bit.
Well, at the same time, you also have to think of the spray from the rear of the cars is hitting everybody else, and he's the one guy who's not getting sprayed.
Yeah, okay, that's true.
So anyway, the race starts, they start racing, and it's pretty much looking like Leclerc is going to lead the entire race because Monaco is not a track that is known for overtakes. It's mostly known for, the glitz and the glamour, unfortunately, and it's not that great of a racing nowadays. If it is a good race, it usually comes down to strategy in the pits, and that's something we saw play into action because when the front runners were changing into the intermediate tires, so to give a little explanation, you have the wet tires, which have deep grooves in the tire, kind of like a regular car tire, and then the intermediates have less of a grooves and they're less deep, but they're supposed to filter out the water so they can get better traction and all that. Well, when they're switching from wets to intermediates after the cars on the lower end of the grid were changing to having better lap times, the first one to go in was Checo. He changed his tires, boom, 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 intermediates. He goes out. Okay. Carlos Sainz is saying, guys, I think we should wait until we can pit for slicks. And they're like, okay. And after Checo pits, next lap, Charles pits and he gets the intermediates and he's back out front. Okay, so he's leading this race. And then by the time that Carlos goes to pit for slicks, Charles is making the turn at the end of the corner where if you see the race map, the last corner, you go into it and then the pits are right there. For some reason, Ferrari did the stupidest thing and pit him in.
Stay out.
Yeah, and then they say stay out. Yeah, they go in. They go box, and then they say, no, stay out. And he's like, what the fuck? And then he's smashing his steering wheel. He's going, fuck, why? What are you doing? Because they're double stacking. But what happened was, because they double stacked, Checo gets out in front. Carlos comes out, and he's behind Lando Norris in P5, I mean. P4 is Lando Norris, and then you have Verstappen in P3. And then to respond to that, they tell the Red Bulls, go, okay, we're going to box now. So they box in, and they get their tires changed. Boom, boom, boom. Checo comes out ahead of Carlos Sainz. Max Verstappen comes out behind Carlos, but ahead of Charles, because Lando pitted. And Ferrari said that both Red Bulls cross the exit pit lane, which is this white line that comes from the pits, and at a certain point you can then merge with the rest of the track. If you merge too early, you get a penalty. But the thing is, I looked at the replay, they didn't cross the white line. What happened was, Max did cross it, but what happened is, because that part of the track isn't really used, the water's still there, so they were actually fighting the car and not trying to crash into the barriers. So, and then later on... Which is understandable. And then the FIA, after the race ended, told Ferrari, sorry, yeah, we're not going to take your appeal into consideration simply because we don't see that he did cross the white line. Which, if you look at the replay, Max did cross the white line. Checo, not really, but again, both of them were fighting the car.
He came close, but...
That happens, and the race still goes on. It's not really a lot of laps are going in, and Esteban Ocon and Lewis Hamilton actually made contact when Esteban was trying to overtake going into a corner, and Hamilton felt that Ocon turned in on him, which he didn't. If you looked at it, they were going side by side, and simply Lewis Hamilton didn't want to give up the spot, and neither did Ocon, but Ocon got the penalty, and he even called out the FIA's, the race steward, saying, I'm surprised why a racing incident I'm giving a penalty when it's never happened before. And then
Because it's Lewis.
yes, and actually Lewis was complaining that because
He turned into on me. No, he didn't.
no, afterwards he was complaining because he couldn't get past Ocon. And then later on, towards the end of the race, he was complaining because Fernando Alonso was holding back the entire grid from 7 down because he was saving his tires. And there was actually a huge gap between the...
I've seen the picture of the track. Like, you've got all the other guys over here, and then you've got the other half over here.
Yeah,
just
like
because of Fernando Alonso.
Yeah, one side of...
We call it the Alonso train.
The Alonso train. But you know what? It's in his right. And Lewis was complaining the entire time. And Alonso, they asked him about it afterwards. He's like, oh, well, it's racing.
What if he was just doing that just to keep Lewis back?
They were teammates, but they didn't really get along. So maybe, a little bit of payback.
It was really interesting. It was like an old lady driving on Sunday, and there's just like all this traffic behind him, and then there's cars honking. It's just like, move, move.
Which is funny because he is the oldest driver on the field.
He's driving like an old man.
Exactly. But this old man got P7. He got points. Now, something that happened, and I'm glad nothing bad happened. Mick Schumacher, he was going into the around the swimming pool area, which is near the bay. And there's a tricky corner right there. And he goes in, and he's got it right, except that he barely touched the water, like the wet line. Because as you saw the race, you saw that there was this line forming where it was dry, and around it was still wet. So that's the dry line, that's the line that gives you the fastest speed and the fastest, you don't have to waste too much time on the brakes and all that. But he barely clipped the wet line, and then he ended up spinning out, and actually the chassis broke in 2 parts. So the rear part of the car where the gearbox, the transmission is located, and the rear wing it snapped completely off, which is by design after the Grosjean incident. And Mick just spun out and he just, hit the barrier, and it was a really nasty hit, but he was okay. But anyway, what did you think about that incident?
I mean, it did not look pretty, and I'm really glad he's okay because every time we see a Mick Schumacher crash, I'm just like, that killed him. But then he just gets up, and so glad he's okay. But this is the second chassis he's broke this year, isn't it?
The one in Jeddah cost Haas nearly $1 million in repairs.
How much is this one?
Probably $1 million in repairs.
Something like that, yeah. Which one was worse? Was this one worse?
I can't remember the other one. I think last time was a little bit worse.
Yeah, it didn't break in half, but I think there was more.
It ripped in half in the back.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so one thing is possibly ruined the engine. Because the engine was sticking out. The exhaust system was sticking out. The gearbox is completely done for. The rear wing is done for. Like, the entire chassis, the only thing you can do with it is recycle the carbon fiber and recycle the metals. That's pretty much all you can do with it.
So what happens when you give teenagers cars?
He's 22.
Oh, he's still young. He talks like a kid.
Like a 13-year-old. But it really puts into question whether Haas will keep him at the end of the year, because his contract is up, like we said last week, and Mick hasn't scored a point, and Mick has crashed 2 cars, and last year he did crash like twice, I think 3 times, and it's just like...
He's becoming a liability.
But there are rumors that he is looking to move into Aston Martin to replace possibly Sebastian Vettel, who may be retiring at the end of this season. But again, that's rumors. Anyway, so they red flagged the race so that they can repair the barriers. In case somebody hits the barriers, they can, it won't be as bad. It'll absorb the impact, and that way they can walk away free.
Also want to point out that Kevin Magnussen also...
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, he also retired early because...
everybody forgot about that.
Yeah, he was having engine trouble. But it's such a Kevin Magnussen thing to do. He's just like, well, I'm out.
Yeah, and like the announcers didn't notice until they're like, oh, well, he retired. We didn't even notice. He had a water pressure issue.
Oh, I got you. So both Haas fell out.
Yeah, both Haas fell out. Anyway, the race is red flag for 25 minutes. The race restarts, and honestly, from there, it was Monaco. There wasn't any exciting. I really didn't see much of overtakes, and ended up being Checo Perez won the race, P1. P2 was Carlos Sainz, and P3 was Max Verstappen, and in 4th, unfortunately for him, was Charles Leclerc.
Vamos, Checo!
Vamos, Checo. But Charles was pissed.
Yeah, he was.
And, this is not the first time Ferrari has fucked up strategies. There's a reason why Sebastian Vettel didn't win the world championship. Not just because Mercedes were really great cars. No, the Ferrari strategists really fucked him over.
Yeah.
So they're like, well, I guess you're going to have to be like Seb. You're going to have to be the race mechanic. You're going to have to change your tires. You're going to have to create your own strategies. You're just going to have to be the entire team, kid, because Ferrari has a history of fucking up.
But also, I saw this morning, see, this was interesting because the whole race with Checo Perez winning, the entire race, they were like, oh, you need to put Max in front because Max is better at driving in the rain and all that stuff. Checo needs to give the position to Max. We heard last race that there was a little bit of button heads there because Checo had to give a position to Max, and he said, I don't like it, but I'll do it.
You said you were listening, you weren't watching, like you were at the gym.
I don't know who I was listening.
Yeah, because you put on the BBC radio essentially.
Yeah, I turned on the BBC radio and it was like in time and it synced up with the TV.
I love listening to the commentary from F1. So I was listening to Sky Sports, which is, again, a European, British, it's essentially their Fox Sports.
Right.
I didn't hear that. So I think you were listening to somebody else.
BBC Broadcast Radio.
Yeah, I don't know who the announcers are, but they're not using Crofty and Brundle.
No, I think that was for sure. It was not.
They were happy Checo won because they've seen Checo's career essentially.
He deserved it.
He deserved it.
It was cool watching him jumping in the Red Bull pool and Max was still right there cheering for him. I'm glad he wasn't just, a Lewis Hamilton about it,
No, he was happy for him. He's happy that Checo won.
And, that really, because the race before, when all that happened with where he had to give the position and he wasn't particularly happy about it, that really says that they agreed on something because actually, I think it was this morning, Checo actually signed a 5-year extension with Red Bull.
It's not a 5-year extension.
Well, what is it?
He's racing until 2024.
Okay.
Yeah, but he did sign his contract, and it did help that Monaco, he won the race. And, Checo's a great driver. He's a great defensive driver, and we saw that against Carlos Sainz.
Oh, yeah.
Especially when he locked up, he still managed to get it right. So he's going to be there with Red Bull for 2024. And something that's interesting is what does that say about the AlphaTauri drivers? Because Max Verstappen, he's got a contract until 2028. Checo has a contract until 2024. Pierre Gasly's contract comes up at the end of this year. Yuki Tsunoda's contract, I think, either comes up this year or next year. So those are two drivers who are hoping to drive for Red Bull Racing, the team that honestly is the better car, who's got the bigger budget and all that. So that comes into question because Pierre was racing for Red Bull, and then he got demoted and replaced by Alex Albon, and then Alex Albon couldn't cut it, and he was replaced by Sergio, and Sergio, he just picked up the pace, and he's like, I got this.
Yeah, Sergio's fantastic.
Yeah, I've never heard of somebody in recent years get replaced in 6 months like Pierre Gasly, and he was hoping to get that Red Bull seat.
He wants to go back up.
Yeah, he wants to get that Red Bull seat, and he's like, either I get the Red Bull seat or I leave, is what I heard about him. So he may be moving to a different team this year.
I think if Mick moves, Pierre's going to go to Haas.
Well, that depends because Mick is a Ferrari Academy driver, and he's in there because Ferrari and the relationship has happened.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting. Although Daniel Ricciardo's contract, even though it doesn't come up till next year, they can cut him at any point, and he's not cutting it.
He's not. Not in the slightest definition because, Lando Norris is sick, and he's still...
He's recovering. He's recovering from it. He wasn't as sick as he was on last week's race, but he's still not 100%. But yet he completely just beat Daniel White.
Where did he finish?
Lando?
Yeah.
If I believe right, I think Lando was P9, 8, somewhere like that. Yeah, I don't know.
Not bad.
I don't remember who was 5th or 6th. I think it might have been 5th because he did. Charles did pass him.
Yeah.
But Ricardo ended up in P13, I believe.
Okay.
And he's just been at the bottom a lot. And at this point, it's like...
As a team, you can't stand a chance like that.
Yeah. Last year, he had the excuse, well, I'm just learning how to drive this car. And, Lando's had years with this car. They've built it to suit him, which, fair enough. But this year, it's like a reset for everybody. And he hasn't gotten it. And I don't think he's going to last long. I think maybe this year or next year is going to be his last year. And he's going to be replaced by somebody younger and somebody who's, unfortunately, a better driver. I think he's out of his prime.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the Formula One race in Monaco. The Monaco race is actually up for debate whether they're going to keep it or not. And a lot of people are saying keep it because Monaco is...
At the time when the rain delay started, they actually said we might just cancel it, right?
Yeah, that would have looked bad for the contract, but that was more...
You would have been down 2 races this year.
And last year, what happened with Spa, which they canceled the race because of that one, you might as well just gotten the boats out. and started racing because it was flooded. The entire place was flooded. They were saying, "Hey, where's Haas? We're gonna need more of their cars." But yeah, so we don't know the fate whether Monaco will stay or not. It's hard to say because Monaco isn't a fun track to watch. It's more the glitz and the glamour. Again,
for the nostalgia, because it is one of the more
historic.
Older.
I think it's the oldest track that has stayed on every year, except for the first year. But yeah, so we're going to see what happens with that. But anyway, that was the Formula One race review. That was the sports news reviews. And now I'm going to give it to you to close this off.
Let me finish this so we can go eat because we're a little bit over time. But ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you for listening to this week's episode. We hope you enjoyed it. We want you to tune in next week wherever you find your favorite podcast. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at The Waterboy Pod. Thank you for listening.
Second and goal just outside the 10. Carr tips it in there. It's Waller. He spins into the end zone for the touchdown. Watching greatness on one end in LeBron. There's a dude with 35 in white getting it done defensively and then offensively.